Japan's surprising curriculum transformation. Japan's educational transformation has followed a markedly different trajectory. The 2025 editions of Japanese history textbooks now dedicate significantly more space to wartime events, though this expansion comes from an extremely limited baseline. Previous textbooks covered the entire period from 1931 to 1945 in just 19 pages out of 357 total pages, with the Nanjing Massacre often reduced to a single sentence. This minimal coverage reflected decades of political pressure that began during the Cold War, when authorities banned textbooks that mentioned Japanese atrocities in detail. Students now encountered detailed accounts of the Nanjing Massacre that span multiple pages rather than single paragraphs. The Comfort Women system receives comprehensive coverage that includes survivor testimonies and documentary evidence, though textbooks avoid specific numerical estimates given the contested nature of casualty figures. Unit 731's biological warfare experiments are presented with specificity that previous generations of students never encountered, marking a dramatic departure from the brief mentions that characterized earlier educational materials. The political forces that created this transformation developed gradually over several decades rather than emerging from a single diplomatic crisis. International pressure came through educational exchange programs that highlighted disparities between Japanese textbook coverage and international historical consensus. Domestic pressure came from an unexpected source: Japanese millennials who had encountered comprehensive wartime history through international media and social platforms. These young adults, now parents themselves, demanded that their children receive the same detailed historical education available in other developed nations. The Liberal Democratic Party initially resisted these changes, but reversed course when polling showed that 73% of voters under 40 supported expanded wartime curriculum. Unit 731 now receives treatment that matches its historical significance rather than the brief mentions that characterize previous textbooks. Students learn specific details about the facility's location in Harbin, the scope of experiments conducted on Chinese and Soviet prisoners, and the post-war immunity deals that protected perpetrators from prosecution. The curriculum includes primary source documents from American military intelligence that detail the unit's activities. Photographs from the facility appear alongside survivor accounts that describe medical procedures conducted without anesthesia. The textbooks explain how Unit 731's research contributed to American biological weapons programs after the war, connecting historical events to broader questions about justice and accountability. The Comfort Women system receives similarly comprehensive treatment that acknowledges the experiences of women from Korea, China, the Philippines, and other occupied territories. New textbooks include maps showing the locations of comfort stations across the Japanese Empire. Students encounter personal testimonies from survivors whose accounts provide detailed descriptions of recruitment methods, living conditions, and long-term physical and psychological trauma. The curriculum addresses the systematic nature of the program while acknowledging ongoing scholarly debates about specific details and numbers. Survivor advocacy efforts reached a critical juncture as the remaining witnesses to Japanese wartime actions entered their final years. Organizations intensified their documentation efforts, creating video testimonies specifically designed for educational use. Japanese survivors of wartime policies also contributed to curriculum changes. Families affected by wartime food shortages, bombing campaigns, and military conscription pushed for textbooks that presented Japanese civilians as victims of their own government's decisions rather than passive recipients of Allied aggression. These domestic survivor voices helped create political space for acknowledging harm inflicted on other populations. Nationalist groups responded to curriculum changes with organized resistance that created significant challenges for schools and educators. The Japan Conference, which includes prominent politicians and business leaders, launched campaigns demanding that textbooks emphasize Japanese suffering rather than actions taken by Japanese forces. Local school boards faced pressure to adopt alternative textbooks that minimized coverage of wartime atrocities. Some nationalist organizations organized protests outside schools that implemented the new curriculum. The controversy intensified when several prefectural governors publicly criticized the Ministry of Education's textbook approval process. Teacher training programs underwent complete restructuring to prepare educators for classroom discussions about sensitive historical topics. The Ministry of Education established specialized institutes that focus specifically on wartime history pedagogy. Teachers participate in week-long intensive programs that cover historical content, classroom management techniques for controversial topics, and methods for addressing student emotional responses to difficult material. Training includes role-playing exercises where teachers practice responding to challenging questions from students or parents. The National Institute for Educational Policy Research now provides AI-supplemented lesson materials that help teachers navigate discussions about comfort women and other sensitive topics with age-appropriate content. Implementation varies dramatically across Japan's 47 prefectures, creating inconsistencies that reflect regional political climates and administrative priorities. Tokyo and Osaka moved quickly to adopt expanded wartime curriculum, while rural prefectures proceeded more cautiously. Some areas emphasized Japanese civilian suffering alongside acknowledgement of atrocities committed by Japanese forces. Others focused primarily on international perspectives and comparative approaches to wartime education. These variations created situations where students moving between prefectures encounter different levels of historical detail depending on their location. Relations between Japan and South Korea have improved measurably as educational approaches become more aligned. South Korean textbooks have historically provided comprehensive coverage of Japanese wartime actions, creating diplomatic tensions when Japanese education minimized the same events. The convergence of educational narratives has facilitated productive discussions about shared historical experiences and collaborative approaches to regional security challenges. Educational exchanges between Japanese and Korean schools have increased, with students from both countries participating in joint historical research projects. The generational divide within Japan regarding historical education reflects broader cultural shifts that extend beyond educational policy. Older Japanese citizens often express concern that expanded wartime curriculum undermines national pride and creates unnecessary guilt among young people. Younger Japanese show different priorities, viewing comprehensive historical education as necessary for informed citizenship and international credibility. This generational split appears in family discussions, workplace conversations, and political preferences. The statistic that 73% of Japanese students support comprehensive wartime education represents a fundamental shift in how young people view their country's historical responsibilities. Students report feeling more prepared for international interactions when they possess detailed knowledge of historical events that affect regional relationships. Many express relief that their education now matches international standards rather than creating knowledge gaps that emerge in global contexts. This transformation in Japanese historical education reflects broader global trends toward more comprehensive approaches to teaching difficult histories, though each nation's specific methods reveal distinct cultural and political priorities.